Welcome to the Pioneers in Pixels audio podcast, hosted by Sanjay K. Katarpal, CEO of Marketing Markers, a digital marketing agency. Here we have discussions with some of the leading attorneys. Disclaimer: the podcast is for educational purposes. Please reach out to attorneys for legal advice.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sanjay Ketapal, and we have Harry Pora from Connor Pora, our personal injury attorney. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you, Sanjay. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
So, Harry, what we're going to do is that we're going to talk a little bit about your personally the area you represent and see and help the customers looking for these kind of guidance from a personal injury attorney. But before we begin, I just want to understand who you are, what you do, your background. Tell me your story a little bit.
Sure. Well, I have a practice here in Edison, New Jersey. I've had it here for quite some time, over 20 years now, I believe. I grew up here in Edison, New Jersey. I was born in Queens to my parents who are Colombian, and so they immigrated here, had me in Queens, New York, but we moved to Edison when I was a very young boy. I went to Edison High School, attended Rutgers College, received my bachelor's of administration in administration of justice, and I got my Juris Doctor. I became a lawyer essentially from Rutgers Camden, and that's Rutgers Law School in Camden. Mm-hmm. I started clerking in a law firm out of here in Edison, New Jersey. As soon as even before I graduated there, I started clerking there. And then once I graduated and passed the bar exam in 1996, I was hired as an associate in the same law firm. I became a partner in that law firm shortly thereafter, probably 3 years later, in around 2000. After I passed the bar exam, I was admitted to practice law here in New Jersey, as well as the Federal District Court of New Jersey. But then once I became a partner there, I worked there for probably another 2 years. And then my current partner, Stephen Kahn, and we branched off from that firm and started our own practice here in Edison, New Jersey in approximately 2002. And we've had a thriving, successful practice ever since.
Awesome. Great. So let me ask a little bit about the personal injury itself. So the landscape of personal injury, how it has evolved since when, like 2002, it's 24 going in. What do you see and how things have changed?
Sure. Well, since the beginning of my practice, I have basically focused on personal injury. I've been doing that my entire career. Personal injury law has most evolved and been affected most recently by the pandemic, actually. Mm-hmm. And during the pandemic, the introduction of Zoom and remote access to the courts has greatly changed everything from motion practice to depositions, arbitrations, mediations, all the way through to jury selection. It's all still being done by Zoom. Obviously, there's a certain convenience that we all enjoy via Zoom. Via Zoom, we can be in the comfort of our own home and still make appearances at other offices. Through my computer, can demonstrate various evidential artifacts and broadcast them just with the click of my mouse. But thankfully, actual physical appearances are still required for trials in court. It's very difficult to conduct, although I have conducted a trial during the pandemic via Zoom. It is very difficult because you do need a certain personal, physical sense of the jury, and they need to be able to see your face. They need to be able to really read witnesses, expressions, and body language. All of that is very important, and so important that the court system has determined, you know what, we need personal appearances to be made for purposes of trial. Luckily, in my law firm, we've always been strong proponents and advocates and users, actually, of technology in our courtrooms. And our trial presentations have always involved technology. So adapting to this change was fairly seamless for us in our law firm. But, you know, it is a substantial change. That's probably the most stark evolution in trial law for personal injury cases since it has been since the pandemic.
So pandemic has changed a lot, but
Yeah.
how your customers or how the people who are like insured and everything, how are they feeling about it? I mean, you must have represented people online and kind of in the court also. Is it different? People like, I don't know what's going on kind of things. They get confused a little.
Well, actually, for my clients, it wasn't so dramatic for them because, you know, I would still allow them to come to my office to meet as long as they were comfortable. Most everyone in their own world had to also adapt to the Zoom. So I have clients who still, you know, since depositions are still conducted in Zoom, some don't have the actual technology to be comfortable using it. You know, it's not good to have to use your phone in your car while you're Zooming, you know, because you have noise in your apartment or something like that. So a lot of them opt to come to my office. We have a special Zoom room where they sit down. They could enjoy the comfort of an office and a good system to Zoom with. They're provided with refreshments and water, and, you know, if they need something to eat during the break, we'll give them something to eat. So, you know, my clients have fairly adapted to Zoom as well.
Oh, that is pretty cool. Like making them comfortable. That is pretty awesome. Question. So this is about like me as a customer or any customer coming in, like, how do I know, or what are the first steps someone should take, like immediately when they're seeing, oh, this is potentially could be a personal injury, or after expecting or after experiencing the personal injury, what they should do? I mean, people get confused a lot saying that, okay, I don't know whether this is qualified to be a personal injury or is it qualified to be a personal injury thing? Should I reach out to an attorney, or going in that direction saying that, well, what should I do now? What is my first step should be?
Well, that's a good question. The first step, hands down, that a person should take if they're injured in any type of capacity is obviously, it's not even a legal issue. It is getting the appropriate medical attention. So if you're hurt, first thing you got to do is go to a doctor, not a lawyer. If you're injured, you go to an emergency room and, you know, do your follow-ups with respect to your health and seek medical attention, not legal attention. There's always time to see a lawyer, but the most immediate action that you should take if you're injured in any way is to go seek medical attention. And then, interestingly enough, that kind of takes care of the legal action. Probably in our cases, the most important evidence that we use as attorneys is the medical evidence. And so if you've gone and sought proper medical attention, you will develop an appropriate medical record, which is direct evidence of your injury and the type of pain that you were in at the time, what treatments the medical doctors administered to you. All of that is essential evidence in your case. And so that is probably the single most important thing, is to seek medical attention and follow up with your doctors and follow their recommendations as to how to treat your symptoms and your injury.
So when they should seek out to an attorney, like few months later, or they like, you cannot come to me after an year. Is there a period when I should reach out to an attorney, or I can just come anytime? Sorry, go ahead.
There is no specific period of time, everyone is different because everyone's injury is often different. So, for example, if you are unconscious and debilitated in a hospital, you can't go see an attorney right away anyway. So, but when the best time to go see a lawyer is when you have the ability to physically, and you have a question as to whether somebody else is responsible for your injury. Then you can go see a lawyer as long as you have taken care of yourself medically first.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I should say that there are outer limits to that. So, for example, if you wait 2 years, the statute of limitations prevents you from filing any kind of a legal action beyond 2 years after the date that you incurred your injury. So you should certainly do it way before then. But shortly after you are injured is okay to go see a lawyer after you've sought medical attention.
Interesting. Okay, so any kind of misconceptions around it? Like a lot of people sometimes they have some kind of like, hey, I can get, if I'm injured like this, I can go there, or I can come, like whatever kind of misconceptions people would have about filing a personal injury lawsuit, things you have encountered and say, no, this is really not a personal injury versus, this is severe one, but you should have come a little earlier. Something on those, people are on both ends. Some come up with like no personal injury, but they want to put a lawsuit. Some people have severe things, but they don't come. Like they have some kind of misconception coming out. What in your experience have you seen and would like to guide your, people coming in for the lawsuit?
I think the most common misconception affecting my industry is the misconception that our system is basically overridden with frivolous or fake lawsuits. I think, the infamous McDonald's case from a long time ago has done a lot to generate that kind of misconception. I mean, a lot of people believe that $1 million for hot coffee from McDonald's is excessive and that's ridiculous and nobody should get, and everybody knows coffee is hot and things like that. But the interesting thing about that case that very few people know is that the facts of that case were that McDonald's was apparently heating their coffee to an extreme. In other words, let's say, and these are not the exact numbers, but let's say coffee boils at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or coffee, rather, regular coffee in the industry is served at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, say, for example, and that would not cause an ordinary third-degree burn.
Right.
But in this particular McDonald's, they were heating the coffee up to 180 degrees or 200 degrees, where Whoa. If you spilled it on yourself, it would cause an immediate third-degree burn. And this particular woman was an older woman, and she was going through the drive-thru, and they spilled the coffee right into her lap, and she ended up sustaining third-degree burns to her genital area, which were severe and required skin grafts and was a terrible thing. And, so then when you think about that, she just originally was just asking for her medical bills to be paid. McDonald's refused, and then they would not pay her medical bills. So she was forced to seek a lawyer's assistance and ended up suing. And when it was found out that they were trying to hide the fact that they were overheating the coffee, and McDonald's took some steps in trying to conceal that information, then suddenly the jury decided that McDonald's sales for a single cup of coffee for one day, it was an amount of money that would justly compensate her. So really that just represented one day of coffee for McDonald's, and to compensate her for the very grievous disabling injuries that she sustained as a result of their actions.
Interesting.
I think for a lot of people, because they believe that there's a lot of frivolous lawsuits that are filed in the system, sometimes they don't want to be one of those people, and they're afraid, well, my case is in substantial, or my case is I don't want to sue. I don't want to sue somebody. They just have like a moral issue with suing someone. But really, the law provides if one person causes the injury of another through a negligent action, the law provides for a system that will allow fairness and justice to compensate that person.
Interesting. That I just got one more point here, which was I was thinking about when you were talking. So is personal injury has to be a physical injury, or it could be any kind of injury?
Well, what other types of injuries?
Well, it's like you may get a very minor person, but the trauma and the shock was tremendous for the person, and that could be another thing. But the injury was very minor to them. That doesn't have to be if a personal injury internally coming in, we can go with the trauma and all those things which is going along with that, or it's just say, oh, physical injury was very less. You just got a scratch burn, or maybe like a little bit of broken finger. That's not enough. But
not really. You cannot be compensated for emotional distress as a result of some injury without a physical manifestation of that emotional distress. So if somebody does a negligent action and all you feel is emotional distress from it, then you cannot be compensated for that unless there is some physical manifestation of that injury. So if there is, for example, it affects you digestively and you go and get medical treatment for that digestive problem, and, things like that, then you might be able to be compensated. But that does not mean that you cannot be compensated for emotional distress if you have sustained a real serious physical injury. So, for example, as a result of somebody's negligence, I lose my leg. Well, that is a compensable injury because of the physical injury itself. Once you establish that, well, then you can recover for the emotional distress that you sustained for having lost that limb. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely. Does make sense. Like an injury plus a severe injury plus a trauma can, yes, be combined, but the cut burns and all this kind of thing, minor stuff coming with a trauma, that cannot be justified that way. Understood.
Correct.
Understood. So are there any cases, or you don't take, or you take all the cases, or is there a way you like, oh no, I want to take these type or not that type? I mean, not personally you, but you and your firm really, which are focusing on.
Yes, and so that is one that kind of goes along with the misconception. I mean, lawyers are probably the first line of defense to any frivolous lawsuit because, there is an expense that we incur in prosecuting those kinds of cases. So, somebody gets a paper cut from an extremely sharp piece of paper that Dunder Mifflin put into the stream of commerce. That is not really something we're going to spend lots of money on doctors and depositions and litigating for the mere possibility that we'll get some money at the end. The likelihood of getting money is very low. And so, I mean, you certainly, the most minor of injuries, or as you were mentioning earlier, just a case of emotional distress on itself, that is not the type of case that a lawyer would ordinarily take. And so right from the get-go, the most insignificant types of personal injury cases are immediately rejected by the lawyer to begin with. And so those never see the light of day. There are certain laws, like as an example, in a personal injury automobile accident case, there are certain thresholds that you have to meet under the law. So, for example, in a typical automobile accident case, most people have selected on their insurance policies something known as the lawsuit threshold. And so what that means is that in order for you to sue, you have to have been a certain amount of injured, and you have to be able to prove that that injury existed by something known as objective medical evidence, such as an MRI or an X-ray or something like that. Anything lower than that, you can't maintain an action. And so that is a type of case that we would ordinarily reject. We would not accept representation on those types of cases.
That is so cool. Okay. So that kind of leads to my other thought, which I was thinking about was, so when a person get into an injury, I know that it's at the time of the injury or at the time of automobile accident, they don't know what state of mind they are, but there are a lot of evidences around it, which probably somebody can capture or things like that. Is there any recommendations, or are you saying that, hey, I know that medical attention is the first thing you should be seeking out for, but anything else you want to guide the customer if they encounter any kind of personal injury kind of things, like something like you were talking about that lady, the coffee was too hot and they just spilled the coffee over her. There could be some evidences which you could have taken. I mean, I know that this was a long time ago. No cameras were there on the phone, but anything which I should be vigilant about, like, okay, you know what? This is an event. I should take some moment out. Any kind of recommendations you have, which will help to build the case in the future, some kind of evidences.
Well, so, for example, on Friday, I just had an arbitration, and in that particular case, my client, he was criticized for not having gone to the hospital immediately following the motor vehicle accident. But his testimony was that as soon as he got into the accident was very hard and serious and traumatic. And he didn't go to the hospital for two reasons. Number one, he didn't even feel his injuries immediately at the moment of impact. And that is very common in our practice. The reason for that is because when you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, you have a substantial amount, your body chemistry changes immediately. You have a substantial amount of adrenaline, and a release of endorphins, which are our body's painkillers, which immediately mask any initial trauma just to try and minimize the amount of shock that your body undergoes immediately. And so some people don't really feel their injuries until those body chemicals have worn off, and that could be later on. And even then, later on, most people's instincts are, well, they're doctor adverse. They don't want to go to a doctor. And so oftentimes they say to themselves, oh, you know what? It'll get better tomorrow. As long as once I get a good night's sleep, my pain will go away, et cetera, et cetera. And then oftentimes they wake up the next day and they're way worse than the day before. And that's another kind of, body, it's another reaction that your body has, similar to like when you go to the gym and you work really, really hard. You might not feel anything that day, but then the following day you can't lift your arms, or the following day you can't walk right because your body is so sore. So some of that comes into play as well. But in terms of evidentiary tips, obviously if you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, you want to take some photographs of the damage to your car. You want to take if you slip and fall at a commercial establishment, you want to take a photograph of the substance and the area in which you fell. Certainly nowadays, with the availability of very high definition cameras on all of our phones, and everyone carries a phone, it's very easy to document photographically and videographically the scene, the damage to certain things, as well as our body. Obviously, if you slip and fall and your your foot is facing the wrong way on your leg, that might be you're not gonna think to do that right away. But I mean, if you have the presence of mind to do that, certainly photographing the progress of your injuries, any scars that develop from photographs and videographic evidence, as they say, the famous phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's great evidence. And so if you think of a video as a series of 1,000 pictures, I mean, a video is worth millions of words.
No, you're right on when you're saying that the body doesn't react to that. I remember that 30 years back, I got into a a bike accident 30, 35 years back. And my bike was totally damaged, and I was like thrown off a car over the top of the car on the other side of it. And I stood up with a helmet and everything was fine. And the tire was like changed the direction. I just pulled it and make it straight. And I drove back to my dad's garage and threw the bike there. My dad was like, "Are you okay?" Like, "I'm fine." And I slept. The next day I couldn't get up. My whole body was in like total shock, and it was nightmare. It took me 2 days to see the actual injuries start showing up. My arm was hurting. Something was more damaged than the other one because the way I landed on the ground. Thankfully, my head was fine because helmet didn't came off. But yes, you're right. It's like it take 1 or 2 days to actually see those injuries start coming up.
Yes, it takes your body some time to react.
Yep. I totally get it. So, when people are going through all of these injuries, very type of injuries, they are there is a lot of emotional things going on. And as a personal injury, you must have come across a lot of people who are actually having a lot of emotional uh, details going around. And how do you manage that? How do you make your customers or people coming to you comfortable and so that they can kind of ready for you to talk and tell about it?
Well, there's a lot of different levels of that. So it's hard to answer that question without knowing what type of emotional distress you're talking about. So I'll give you a somewhat of a range. So a lot of times when there is a court proceeding that is about to happen, let's say, for example, my client's deposition, there's a lot of stress and anxiety that goes into that. And so part of my job as a lawyer is similar to like a coach's job on an athlete that's about to compete, and that is managing their anxiety and their nervousness going into it so as to optimize performance. So the way that I handle that situation is, number one, by taking enough time to properly prepare them, make sure that they have all of the information and refresh their recollection with respect to a lot of their medical treatment, and give them an idea of what types of questions they're going to be asked in a deposition, and give them an idea, obviously, of how to answer those questions. And another misconception out there is that lawyers tell their clients what to say, give them a script or something like that. That is not what proper preparation is about, because if you were to do something like that, it is doing an injustice to the client. I mean, the client just needs to tell the truth, but a lot of times memories fade over time. Mm-hmm. So your job is really to refresh their recollection. You can't tell them what to say because you yourself don't know. They're the ones who have experienced the trauma. They're the ones who have experienced the effect that the trauma has had in their lives. You can't possibly know that. So you, as the lawyer, you can't possibly tell them what it is that they have to say. It's based on their experience. It's based on what they went through. And so they're the only ones who really know. But having done hundreds of these depositions, I have a general idea of what kinds of questions they're going to be asked. And you simply inform them as to that. And you can relieve a lot of their anxiety and nervousness just by eliminating the uncertainty of what's about to happen. And so they'll feel a lot better once they realize that, oh, these are the questions they're going to ask me, and I know the answers. And also, they are nervous of giving the wrong answer. But as soon as they find out that, look, there is no real wrong answer, because if you don't remember something, it's okay to say you don't remember. If you don't recall, it's okay to say you don't recall. You just give them the truthful answer to the best of your knowledge and ability and memory, and that is enough. There is no pass or fail. You're not going to be graded on it or anything like that. And so alleviating that kind of anxiety. Now, the other types of emotional distress that are more serious, like, say, for example, the emotional distress that comes from the loss of your child or a family member, or like I was talking about earlier, the loss of your limb. Those kinds of things are the types of emotional distress that I would consider beyond my capacity as a counselor in a legal sense to assist them with. Now, I do act as somewhat of a counselor in that sense, because I've had so much experience with this type of thing and have had so many clients in the past that have dealt with that. I have a general sense as to how to assist them, but for the most part, I would recommend that they see a licensed therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist who is better equipped and trained and educated in assisting them in those types of real serious, what I would call medical level traumas.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes total sense, actually. I was looking at your details on the website you have. There was like one of the things you said, pro bono Piscataway et al. And Texas Eastern Energy Corp. I know that you do a bunch of pro bonos also, but this one was like kind of highlighted well. Talk about that for a minute.
Sure, that was what my partner and I would call the pipeline case, and it was a case that we represented a group of neighbors on a street in Piscataway, and the Duke Energy pipeline, they were looking to remove these very old shade trees, and the neighbors were very upset about that. And they got together and decided to ask for a lawyer to help them. They came to us. We agreed to help them. They didn't have any money, but we do love trees also. And my partner and I reside in Piscataway as well. So we took on this Duke Energy, corporation that was trying to eliminate these trees for purposes of not even fixing their pipeline. They just wanted to be able to observe it. And so we were able to represent them in court, and we were able to convince the district judge in federal court to prevent their removal of the trees and force them to use less invasive, less severe methods of monitoring their pipeline. And so we were literally able to save the trees. And then the neighbors got together and they made us a little plaque. It's hanging on our wall.
How cool is that?
It was very cool. That's an interesting case.
Okay, so there's a couple of more things which I want to like see over the period, especially last 4, 5 years, 6 years. People are going digital a lot, and they are working on the digital and everything, and marketing has gone up. So how digital or digital marketing, in your case, playing a role to reach out to the right people and the customers, or people wanted to know you, what you do kind of thing. How is that working for you, helping you or not?
It's hard to say because we have probably lacked in our digital marketing. I mean, obviously we have had our website revamped, and we have had it made more friendly for the advent of the phone and being able to look at it on your phone as opposed to your computer and things like that. But for the most part, digital marketing, I know we see all kinds of ads on the internet for lawyers and things like that. But, I see a lot of the law firms are still sticking by the billboards. I see billboards on the turnpike and everything. Yes. They must be spending thousands and thousands of dollars on that, when I feel like that money might be better invested in digital marketing. But maybe you would be able to tell us more than I.
No, that's perfectly fine. I mean, like, I can talk for length and length about how digital marketing has actually changed the way people are reaching out, because most of the time it's an education which helps the customers to know it, because most of the people don't know about it. So trying to go ahead.
Here's what I will say. Digital marketing has completely eliminated that big yellow book. Remember the yellow pages? We used to pay for an ad on that. I used to have like the inside cover of it. And we would spend, I mean, probably over $30,000 a year for that.
Yeah.
Digital marketing pretty much killed that expense for me. So I'm grateful for that.
That's that's a good one. That's a good one. So, so Harry, thank you so much for all of these details. How can somebody reach out to you? Like, uh, any kind of contact, or what do they do to reach out to you? It's very
Sure. Well, I'm pretty sure if you just Google my name, Harold Para, my law firm will come up. But my law firm is conparalaw.com. We are in Edison, New Jersey. My telephone number is 732-650-0444. You can reach me by email if you get on my website, and that's pretty much it.
That is so cool. Anyway, thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome,
I
Sanjay.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Pioneers in Pixels. We hope the discussion was enlightening and informative, giving you a clearer insight into the complexities. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. Join host Sanjay K. Katarpal next time for more insights and interviews with leading legal experts. Until then, stay informed and empowered. This has been Pioneers in Pixels. Thank you for listening and have a great day.